Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show. Should I replace my windows? Should I restore my windows? Come find out today in the Build Show. Okay guys, so we've got two projects going on right now. We've got Thistle Hill, historic 1904 house. We're restoring the windows, okay? You might have seen those in some other videos on there. Paint was peeling, there was some rot. Why are we restoring those windows? We've got another project in Dallas, an old high school, and we're definitely replacing those windows. But why? What was the difference between those two windows that made the difference that we restore these and replace those? Thistle Hill, the primary reason those windows are restorable, okay, is that 98%, maybe 95% of the wood is in good condition. It's sound. The paint's peeling, but if you're looking at your windows and saying, my paint's peeling, I need to replace them, you're completely out of whack. And unfortunately, we're given a lot of information these days from the flyers in our mail, from those who shall not be named, people who are always pushing replacement, how it's going to save you money, going to save you energy. A lot of that just isn't true, okay? And you can watch my other videos on replacement and restoration and why it makes sense to restore them, especially if you're looking at it from an energy perspective. We have been ingrained now to think that, oh, replacement's always better. And it just isn't. And here's a good example, okay? This is a sash, a lower sash at Thistle Hill, okay? Now, many of you might see the rot in that bottom rail, okay? Might look at that hole down there, might look at the general condition of the wood and go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. We have to replace it. The fact is, the beauty of the historic restoration project is that all of these parts and pieces are completely replaceable independently. We're going to replace this bottom rail because the joinery is loose here. That we've got a lot of wood rot and missing wood here. So we're going to redo the tenon, redo the pieces on this lower rail and replace it. All of these other things, as you'll see when we look at these restored windows, all they need is a little TLC, a little sanding, a little paint, a little prep, and this window will last another 100 years. Now, the reason why it's going to last another 100 years comes down to the thing, if you've watched my other videos, it's all about the wood. Our wood quality here, it's all virgin growth timber because it was done in 1904, and we know that the wood quality is the reason why, even though these windows haven't been painted or maintained, and they're still here. You know, the reason we started making the 100-year window was because the production windows we were getting were rotting out in 10 or 15 years. Why? Because the wood quality is terrible, right? It's no good. We can't use radiata pine in Texas and expect it to last. So wood quality is really one of the big deals. But if you're looking at your window, if you're looking at peeling paint, okay, if you're looking at slightly pitted wood or a little bit of a decay in the wood, if your joinery, as in this case right here, has gone away, right? This is supposed to be a mortise and tenon joint and it's gone. Those are kind of the clues of my windows might need restoration. I would say that 80% of the time windows are replaced out of historic houses they don't need to be. 80%, okay? Now that's the Brent Hull factor, and that's the Brent Hull frustration with seeing these great historic windows being torn out of houses for no need, okay? The one thing I will add in this thing is that, if you consider sustainability, the environment, right? If you consider those things, there's no better use of our resources than to restore. The carbon footprint's done. There's no more, carbon expense going to happen. If you tear this out, if it goes into a landfill, if it gets destroyed, buying a new one, installing and putting it in, is just huge carbon footprint. So the best thing we can do, and this goes with our buildings as well, that we shouldn't be tearing down our historic buildings, because the sustainability and environmental factor is huge savings by keeping and restoring the existing. Speaking of replacement windows, okay, on this historic house, we're restoring existing windows. Booker T over in Dallas, we are going to be putting in new windows. We're going to go back with our 100-year window. Why? Those windows were replacement windows, okay? And you'll see from the pictures that the joinery was failing, the wood was failing, didn't use good quality wood, therefore the wood was falling apart. But I mean, those windows were literally ready to just push out of the frame. They were in such bad condition. So there was nothing there to restore, right? In this case, I can put a new rail on this window and fix it up and restore it like I'll show you in a second. And it's a great working window. 80% of the original window is still there. But those, there is maybe 3% of that project was original, right? It had been replaced and restored badly over time, and now we're going back and we're going to fix it right so that they put in another 100-year window so that they actually have a really long sustainable product in that building. There's few other tweaks that you might want to realize too. You know, we like that putty glazing. We like to go back with the putty glazing. Now, why is that? Well, when you go back, a lot of new window companies have a wood stop, okay, holding in the glass. So if I look at this window, and by the way, there's another good example of should we keep it, should we, you know, there's a loose joint there, some wood that's falling off, but there's a loose joint here. Or is this replacement or is this restoration? And the quick answer is it's restoration. I can put a Dutchman in here. This joinery is still sound, and we'll put this window back together, and it will, again, because the wood quality is so good, will last another 100 years. If you look at this mutton bar, okay, it's a curved mutton bar. Basically what you've got is our window profile right here, right? And then my glass sits right on top of that shelf right there, and then it comes over. Now we use a putty glazing, okay, and I'll show you that on that other side. But the putty glazing ends up being this sacrificial material that if you have your historic windows and if your putty is falling out, okay, that doesn't mean you should replace the window by any means. That is doing what it's supposed to do, in that it's a sacrificial material that when it gets decayed or when there's water that's gotten in here and it needs to be restored, it's almost telling you, hey, it's time to restore me, because you want to keep the water out, the glazing keeps the water out, and it's a weaker material than the wood. Ideally, especially if you're using old growth wood. That is kind of a signal that that goes away. If I have a wood stop in here, like new windows are being built with today, the whole thing rots, right? Not only does my glazing putty piece fall out, but the wood rot gets into this piece and it starts to ruin my whole window. So realize that that putty glazing is a really important piece to making this window successful. Okay, so I now want to take you through this process, right? We've got all these windows in here that we pulled out indoors, show you that restoration project from the dipping to the cleaning to the redoing, the glazing, all of that stuff on that other side. Let me show you that now. So what you're seeing here is just kind of stacks of shutters and wood and doors, more sash. We've got some curved sash that you might remember in there. These are all really sound. One of the reasons we are restoring this is that in a lot of these sashes, 99% of the wood is in great shape, and there may be an area where there's a little bit of wood that needs to be tightened up or glued or whatever. For the most part, they're in great shape. The first thing we do when we come into the shop is we take them and we dip them in a bucket. And let me show you that outside. This looks really bad, doesn't it? So this is our tub for dipping our sash. It's lye, okay? It's caustic soda, okay? Which is mostly soap, like soap is made from lye. And so basically what happens is the oil-based paints especially get into this tank, and we leave the windows in the tank for about 12 to 14 hours. In that time, it loosens up the glazing putty. If you've ever tried to restore a window, the glazing putty can be really hard sometimes. It loosens that up, and it definitely takes all the paint off. And so this is one of the speed up steps that we're able to use when we're doing this commercial and we're doing 100 windows in this building. This ends up speeding up our process because getting the paint off, especially in some of those diamond light windows, which it's so tedious to get in there, this does so much of that handwork, cleaning up these windows, getting them ready, and then we take them inside, put them on the bench, we start restoring them. He is now restoring a window, right? There you'll see a little bit of putty glazing or a little bit of Abitron, so any spots that need to be slightly repaired or put together, we use Abitron to kind of fill in large holes. It's a two-part epoxy that will fill in areas where wood's chipped out or moved. He's going in here, he's sanding. Any paint that was left on after it's been in the tank is cleaned off and is sanded. And then look what we're doing here, right? Every window, we take all the glass out, number the window, and then we'll go back, clean this glass and put it back in. One, we keep the window in its original condition and with the original sash, but a lot of these things sometimes have little slight differences in fitting, so we have to get it back to the right window or else we end up with a lot of glass that we can't use or can't find a place for. Also, we love wavy glass. So you'll see we have stockpiles of wavy glass, so anything that was broken, we actually replace with a piece of wavy glass so that the whole window has that great historic look. Now I talk about glazing, okay? Now you'll notice that some of these windows have a wood stop, okay? So there's not a glazing stop, but it's not an integrated wood stop. Remember I was showing you out there where the glazing putty goes. In this case, and I find in our work maybe 5% of historic windows have a wood stop. Majority of them have putty glazing. It tends to be windows that are kind of the better windows from better houses have a wood stop, but not always. And so, you know, in the cases where we have to go back with a wood stop, we do that, but it's a separate piece. So if this rots and if it goes away, I'm not losing my whole sash. I'm just replacing that stop. So that's one way to get around that putty glazing if you really don't want it. After we're done cleaning up in here, it goes over to the paint booth and it gets primed, okay? Once it gets primed, there's a kind of a last step of figuring out where any holes or where any things we need to repair, and then it goes over here where it needs to get glazed. So what you're seeing here is once it comes off the bench, it comes in here and we prime it. That's really all we're doing in this process. We don't, and this is before we go back and glaze the window. So we've taken a sash that's been on the bench and we prime it like this. One of the things the priming does is it allows us to see in here where any problems or defects are, and we're actually able to get in here and clean those up. It goes from the bench in here, it gets primed, then it goes back out there and it gets glazed after this step. But priming and kind of getting it back is kind of almost the last step before we glaze the window and get it ready to go back out to the job. One of the things you'll also see is all these things stamped, okay? And basically there's a window map on the house, and you may have seen some of those other windows, they actually had a mark slot on the side. Well, before they get too far, we take numbers and we stamp where they're going to go so that we know exactly which sash goes back into which hole based on this map that we've got at the house. So now you're looking at a couple sashes that are almost ready to go back to the job. You've got all the glass put in, now it's been cleaned, right? It's been set into its different holes. What will happen now is we'll take it out. We use a Sashco product, Lexel, right in here. It's like a silicone, very small bit of that to make sure these are weatherproof. We bed the glass into that silicone and drop it down in here, and then we come back and putty glaze this. So the putty glazing then gets done, right? And so this width window sash is now ready to go back to the job. It's been putty glazed all the way around, right? So if you look at some of my other videos on how to putty glaze a window, you'll see this. But this now is putty glazed. We're waiting for the glazing to dry. It can take weeks sometimes, but with the heat on and everything in here, it'll dry fairly quickly. Then we'll take it back out to the job site and it'll get its final prep and final paint back when it's back in the hole. Okay guys, when to restore, when to replace, right? Hopefully you've gone through, seen what takes place in restoration, understand a little bit better about when your windows need to be replaced. 80% of the time, Brent Hull's rule, they don't need to be replaced, okay? So remember that. Now, if you need your windows restored, there's a great resource called the WPA, Window Preservation Alliance. They have a directory online where you can actually go by state and regionally find someone who can do a window restoration. It's a great group. If you want to do it yourself, they have great how-to tools. They sell you the tools, Sarco putties, some of the different putties that are being used, the cotton sash rope. So if you're looking to restore it yourself, that's a great resource. You need to maybe start there. If you want to watch my step-by-step video, it's about a 45-minute where I take out a window, restore it, and put it back in. That takes you step-by-step to the whole process, from cutting the glass to glazing, taking it out. All those different things are right there if you want to use that. And then if you have a historic house and it needs replacement, please remember the 100-year window, right? The reason we started building that one is because we were working on these windows. We're like, why are these windows lasting so long? And we copied the past. So it's an excellent historic resource for great historic houses that need original wood windows. That's a great place to start. I'm Brent Hull, thanks for watching.